Good morning. As you can see, we're filming in a different location today, still by water because water is the important element here. I'm at my parents' house actually, visiting with family, but I still wanted to do a video, and I especially wanted to do a video out here because this is where my husband and I got married. Whenever I tell people my husband and I got married in my parents' backyard, I think they picture something different. So I love this space. It's like an oasis. My dad designed it and created it actually in 2020. I think three or four of my siblings and I have gotten married in their backyard, which is really cool. And honestly, a story for another time. But I might go ahead and tell it and just do a separate video because I think it's really important and it speaks to something that's really important to me, which is Black love and legacy and family. And I always say a part of why I wanted to get married here is to honor the legacy of what my parents built and the foundation they set in my life, and for what love looks like to me and what I believe love is, especially Black love. So it's a really special place for me. So I'm really happy and excited to be filming here. But that is not what we're actually talking about today. We are talking about chapter 6 of Rooted, and it's such a good chapter. I'm excited to share it with you today. It really explores the role of Black women in reclaiming the land and owning the land and stewarding the land. And Brea does such a beautiful job, not just tracing her own lineage, but talking about some really important and forgotten or unknown figures in our history, Black women, Black trans women, and the key role they played in acts of liberation, in acts of independence, and how that connects to the land. So we're gonna get into some gender, some sexuality, all very important topics, especially to me. I say I'm a race scholar, but when you're a race scholar who's also intersectional and a Black feminist, that means you talk about gender because race has shaped how gender is constructed in this society. It certainly shaped sexuality and other things as well. Race touches everything. Go see one of my shorts to learn more about that. But before we get into it, I did want to talk about a few frameworks and a few concepts to make sure we're all on the same page. And, I did say I'm an educator, so I got to make sure people understand what we're talking about. So with today's chapter, we're going to explore different concepts. So I want to set the foundation in the background and talk about two things: intersectionality and Black feminist thought or Black feminist scholarship. So first, intersectionality is a framework. It was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, who is one of my favorite scholars. I actually met her for the first time this past year, and she was fantastic. She called me Dr. Brewer. I was like, but intersectionality really examines how race, like I was just saying, race isn't just race alone. It's constitutive of gender and sexism and all of these other isms. It intersects with them. And so when we think about the experiences of Black people, we might universalize the experiences of Black men in particular, and historically that's what we have done. But when you look at the intersections of not just Black people, but Black women, Black trans women, Black LGBTQIA community members, we may see, or we do see, the nuances and the differences in our experiences. And when we ask why those experiences are different, we have to zoom out from looking at the people to looking at the structures. Racist structures in our society rely on sexism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, classism, all of these things to reinforce power. It's always about a power structure and honoring that power structure. In this country, that power structure is built on whiteness, on heterosexuality, on maleness, and middle class to upper class. There's a really property ownership, which we talked about a few videos ago. So in today's video and today's chapter, we examine not just the experiences of Black people with land, but we get a little bit deeper into the intersections. Black women, Black trans women, how it intersects with marriage, heterosexual marriage, and what that has meant for many Black people, Black women throughout history. Intersectionality is a framework under Black feminist thought, and Black feminist thought is so important because historically we've, again, hyperfixated on not just the experience of Black people, but the experiences of Black men. And it's an important story to tell. I will never dismiss that, but it's not the only story of Black people. When we think about the issues that Black people have faced, Black women have faced specific issues, specific types of oppression, specific types of domination because of their sex and their race. And when you look at that intersection, again, you realize there's so much more to the Black story than just what Black men have gone through, but Black children as well, and Black women. So we're going to look at the intersections today. I have my tea here because I'm in Michigan, y'all, and it's actually cold. It's not cold. It's probably like 60 something degrees or 70. It might even be 70. But compared to Georgia, it is not that hot. So I'm literally sipping hot tea in the middle of August, or almost the middle of August. So what a mercy. Um, I think the only other thing I wanted to say on Black feminist thought is there is a book, kind of like a canonical seminal text. It's a collective text of Black feminist authors, and the book is called All the Women Are White, All the Blacks Are Men, But Some of Us Are Brave. And that sentiment really expresses how Black women have felt. This invisibility socially and politically and legally, which Kimberly Crenshaw talks about, that treats all the Black people as men and all the women as white. And instead of examining how race and gender again intersect and what that has meant for the opportunities, experiences, and barriers that Black women face specifically. So this chapter examines that in a really thoughtful way. I thought chapter 18 or chapter 16 and chapter 8 were my favorite chapters, but I think in my second read, chapter 6 is actually one of my favorite chapters. So let's get into it. Okay. So I'm going to start at the beginning of the chapter, but then we're going to jump around. It's actually a really short chapter, but it is packed with so much interesting things. You're going to see why I talked about Black feminist thought and the intersections, because we talk about the difference in experiences of she gives a story of a Black trans woman named Lucy. We talk about the differences in economic opportunities of Black women versus white women. A lot of us heard a very specific history of feminism, which starts with women entering the labor force during World War II. That's not accurate. Black women and women of color have always been in the labor force because we've always been domestic workers or even working in the fields and doing jobs that were traditionally assigned to men. Black women and women of color have experienced that as well. And that's shaped our socialization as women of color and as Black women. So this comes up in this chapter in a really interesting way. Okay. Let's see. So I'm going to start at the beginning really quickly. Okay. Black women, based on their unique experiences at the intersection of race, class, and gender in the 20th century, were focused on survival and resistance, which ultimately pushed them toward land ownership. Though erased in many ways, Black women were as much a part of the land-owning movement as Black men. When Louise Baker purchased more than 300 acres in 1873, he didn't do it alone. Nancy Harris was right there with him. When Lewis later married Nellie Williams, my great-great-great-grandmother, it was the land he purchased with Nancy that would be passed down to his children with Nellie. My family line benefited from Nancy's labor and foresight. So they end up passing it down to two of their daughters, Patty Lee and Hattie Bell, who later pass away, and then they pass it to their baby brother, Frank L., and he marries Martha. And Martha apparently had some level of financial independence, and so she says that Martha didn't need Frank, she wanted him. But with or without him, her economic future was set by both her parents' savviness and their own capabilities. So the fact that she had access to property and land meant that she didn't have to get married. She wanted to, and so she chose to. Again, that independence that land gives us, which is really cool. She says, Martha, like Frank L., descended and profited from Black land-owning ancestors. So she always knew what autonomy looked like up close. I said it before. Land gives us access to independence. And when we think about Black women owning land in the 20th century, when there was so little economic opportunity for women broadly, it's really unique to see how land doesn't just give Black people independence, but Black women independence ahead of their time. And Brea goes on to say, and this is fascinating when we think about feminism, intersectional feminism, Black feminism, on page 83, interestingly enough, Black women tended to have more employment opportunities post-emancipation due to their perceived ability to work both in fields and inside homes. On our visit to historic Stagville, the tour guide reiterated just how common it was across the late 19th and early 20th century North Carolina to see Black women with disposable income. A lot of domestic formerly enslaved people signed contracts with white widows who had no idea how to cook or clean or do anything. Actually, domestically, formerly enslaved women had the most economic power because of that. You think about how enslavement gave them skilled labor that post-emancipation they were able to leverage for economic independence. And so where once upon a time they worked for free for white households and white women, they were now getting paid, still, I wouldn't say equitably, but they were getting some money. They had two fields, so to speak, that they could work in. Literally outside doing hard labor that men were also doing, or indoors domestically doing labor that white women didn't even know how to do. They didn't have the skills, the knowledge, because it had always been done for them. So post-emancipation, Black women have disposable income. They have extra money. She says these are stories of these there are stories of these white war widows having to sell their dresses to get extra money. And the only people who had the money to buy these dresses were the formerly enslaved domestic women who were working for them. And these white women, you could tell, were not very happy. The more disposable income one had, the better the chances of owning land versus sharecropping or renting from someone else. Though many Black women at the time needed to purchase land alongside or through a male proxy, the money was their own. So Black women have disposable income in this time. Their own subjugation allows them to accumulate skill sets that are needed in the marketplace, especially post-emancipation, and they end up having more money that is their own that white women don't have access to. And white women have to sell their clothing to get money to these Black women. So not only do Black women get the status of this new clothing, but there's this interesting positionality, this interesting shift in power that kind of happens, not just economically, but socially, at least for these Black women. And then what's cool is when they own the land, they do a number of things from market gardening and poultry raising to owning a brothel. Don't judge. So she talks about this Black woman named Lucy Hicks Anderson. She was born in Kentucky. And during Prohibition, Lucy had a brothel. And it was also a speakeasy. And so she ran this really thriving and successful business until a Navy man accused Lucy's sex workers of giving him a sexually transmitted disease. So because of that, they were forced by the military to all get tested and do medical examinations. And it was exposed at the time that Lucy was actually a trans woman. Now, obviously at this time, this is illegal, and she's married to a man. And so both her husband and her get put in jail. Interesting, even when you look at the story, because she says, during the trial, Lucy reiterated, I have lived, dressed, and acted just as I am, a woman. And actually her physician, her childhood physician in Kentucky, when she was born, she expressed that she thought that she was a woman and she felt like a woman. And so her physicians told her parents that she should be raised as a girl, and that she should be able to dress as a girl and live as a girl. And so that's how her parents raised her. And it's so interesting to think about how in Kentucky, we think about the history of LGBTQIA communities, of trans rights as this linear thing. We didn't have it and then we did. But really, you have someone in Kentucky in the early 20th century saying, oh, if this child feels like they're a woman, it might be best for them socially and medically to be raised as a woman or raised as a girl. And then you have in California, which we think as more progressive, them being jailed for this and it being illegal. And Brea talks about it, but this is a group of people that we often treat as invisible. We don't acknowledge their history, and so we think it popped up in the 21st century, or we think it popped up only recently. We have this very limited political view and historical view of the very visible and real presence and contribution of Black, trans, and queer people. And Lucy's story is a really important piece of that. And as Brea says, it's a beautiful example of not just the importance of land ownership and the economic opportunity, but an example of a Black trans woman being loved by a Black man and them having a loving, happy relationship. She didn't have to hide herself. He knew who she was, and he accepted her and supported her. Brea writes, far too often, though, when we imagine a group of Black people facing off with injustice and marching toward victory, we envision men. All the Blacks are men, right? Black men in suits at the front lines of protest, Black men in overalls tilling the land, Black men on pulpits leading congregations. But what of Black women in our role? In being part of a chorus, women's voices have been drowned out. But Black women and other gender marginalized Black people have also trodden the stony road and let their voices resound loudly in their pursuit of justice. To paraphrase a question that Oprah Winfrey asked Meghan Markle in her 2021 interview, Black women and LGBTQ plus people have been silenced, not silent, despite playing pivotal roles in burgeoning Black land ownership. So again, what I love about this history and this story is it puts at the forefront people we don't think about when we talk about Black history and when we talk about Black land ownership. Even myself, we've talked about it in a very gender neutral way. And when we say gender neutral, we really mean male centered. And so explicitly talking about where Black women have been in this history. Have Black women owned land? According to Brea Baker and her research, her family, the story she told about Lucy, yes, we did and we do own land. And in fact, there is a growing population of Black women, not just Black families, who own and reclaim the land and are rethinking their relationship to it. I follow these incredible Black women farmers across the country, North Carolina, California, Texas, all over, who are doing incredible work to reclaim the land and in it finding true independence. One thing I reflected on today and shared in a short is that the land isn't sexist. The land don't care about your gender. The land don't care about your race. The land don't care about your class position. Land and nature seek homeostasis. They seek balance. And frankly, sexism, racism, classism is out of balance. It gives too much power to one group of people that leads to exploitation. And in it, I skipped that part, but she talks about how Black women were often getting sold undesirable land. And people thought they were getting one over on them, but then a few years later, it's thriving land because there's no such thing as bad land. There's only bad stewards. And I think Black women in particular are really suited for land stewardship because we understand what it's like to be exploited and oppressed and trodden on. And so we take the empathy that we desire to see in our communities and with each other, and we put it towards the land, and we give to the land, and we offer our labor and our love to the land, and the land gives us bountiful harvest and things in return. Okay, yep, it says here, one former dressmaker recently moved from St. Louis, saved $200 in 1 year from her sewing work, and used it to rent 5 acres from a local farmer. The farmer thought he was getting it over on the young dressmaker because he had rented her the worst land on his farm. Yet in a few short years, the woman and her husband had made enough money to buy the land 10 times over. So he thought, he was like, I'm going to rent the worst land. She's not going to be able to produce anything on it. But again, there's no bad land. There's just bad stewards. So when we step away from human designed societies, human created structures, we realize that there's opportunity for all of us. I was thinking recently about how people created inequality and they created scarcity for the sake of power accumulation and power maintaining. But in nature and in land, there's balance and there's abundance. No one has to go without. No woman has to be without opportunity or freedom or independence or food for her own and the ability to take care of herself. The land gives us the gender equality we've been fighting for in human-made societies. The land gives us the economic opportunity and independence we desire. The land liberates us. It offers the opportunity to liberate us. Chapter 6 is a quick chapter, so this video might be a bit short too, but get into it. It's a good one, and I think we all need to know this history so we make sure that when we talk about Black people, we're not just talking about Black men. We tell those stories, but we also tell the stories of incredible Black women, incredible Black trans women, and the work and labor and love they've put into getting us to where we are today and inspiring the next generation of landowners and stewards.